Welcome to the channel where we explore the dark side of human nature and uncover the stories behind shocking crimes. Today we will talk with you about how an unborn child caused a cruel death and how the difference in age still plays a big role in love. If you like stories that reveal the depth of human emotions and the consequences of violating moral norms, you are in the right place. In this episode, we are waiting for terrible secrets between a teenager and an officer, and how friendship turned into feelings, which led to terrible consequences and a cruel reckoning of love, and how a careless little boy could influence the fate of two people who swore to be together for the rest of their lives. Sarah Reynolds was only 17 years old. She had barely entered adulthood, but she exuded an innocence that could only come from a person who was still learning the rules of the game in this world. She was quiet, shy, reserved, and did not seek to be the center of attention. Tom Foster, Julia's husband. Tom is a hard-working businessman who has dedicated his life to providing for his family. A man of routines and values, Tom trusted his wife completely, never suspecting the darkness that lay just beneath the surface. Who would have thought how a little girl like Sarah could contain such big secrets? It all started off pretty innocuously. Sarah Reynolds, as a high school student, started working at a local diner where Bill often dined. Sheriff Bill Dixon was 50 years old, but he looked young and handsome in his 50s. He was a man who couldn't do anything wrong, at least in the eyes of the townspeople. Sheriff Bill had a family, his wife of 25 years and 2 sons. He had served his community for more than 2 decades, maintaining law and order in his own firm but friendly way. But what the city didn't see, what no one wanted to believe, was that Bill was hiding a dangerous secret behind his badge. In the small town of Cannelton, located in the heart of rural America, where everyone knows each other's names and secrets must remain secret, a scandal will soon break out that no one can ignore. This is a story about forbidden love, betrayal, and violence that will shake society to the core. The plot centers on a powerful sheriff and a vulnerable teenage girl whose tragic relationship ends in pregnancy and murder. In the quiet, unassuming town of Cannelton, surrounded by hills, life flowed more slowly, allowing its residents to enjoy the simplicity of suburban everyday life. The town, dotted with charming houses and lush parks, radiated warmth and tranquility, where families gathered at local eateries and neighbors warmly greeted each other from behind white picket fences. The Dyson family was one of the respected families in the area. Their house was located in the center of the city, so that in emergency situations and urgent calls they could be at the scene of the accident. Their front yard, always immaculately maintained, demonstrated Julia's love of gardening, a passion she developed to bring beauty and color into their lives. He loved his family very much, and his sons also treated him with great love and respect. Julia, lively and loving, was faithful to her husband and her family with all her heart. His sons also loved their mother very much and did not let anyone offend her. She had a natural ability to find common ground with people, and thanks to her gentle approach, the men of this city often fell in love with her, despite the fact that she was married and had no children. For the outside world, she was the link that united their family, turning the house into a place of warmth and unity. The eldest son, 17-year-old Liam, who had entered a crucial teenage period, found solace in Sarah's presence. She became not just a classmate, but also a friend with whom he could talk about things that he was uncomfortable discussing with his father. Sarah listened to him attentively, encouraged him in his studies, in his interests, and helped him cope with the usual difficulties of teenage life. At first, it seemed that their relationship was based on sincere affection and mutual support. The youngest son, Robert, went to elementary school. He was 12 years old, often stayed with a friend who was the son of his mother's friend and rarely came to his home. But under the pleasant appearance of this charming and friendly family, the family began to hide unspoken desires and unknown emotions. Sarah's role in the family became more complicated as she developed a deeper, hidden affection for Bill. She found herself enjoying the moments when they were together. Her gestures and words took on a new meaning. Her attention was focused not only on his well-being, but also on the subtle, exciting feeling that her presence awakened something more in him. Over time, What started as a friendly attachment turned into something forbidden, filling Sarah with excitement and guilt. At first, these feelings seemed harmless, an inner fantasy that she convinced herself would pass. But as they spent more time together, there was a sense of mystery and danger, amplifying her emotions. Bill, although he was old enough to be her father, also felt the complexity of their relationship, feeling the boundaries of their relationship, but not knowing how to overcome them. The growing intimacy became a double-edged sword. Sarah's affection bordered on obsession, and their communication was tinged with a sense of forbidden attraction. The house, which once served as a refuge, turned into a place of conflicting emotions, where Bill remained in oblivion, absorbed in work and daily duties. Julia loved Bill and trusted him, but the subtle changes in his family life haunted him. The long look from Sarah and Bill, the intermittent whispers, the momentary laughter that seemed inappropriate. Julia shrugged off his instincts, writing it off as a natural relationship as a father to his daughter, related to the creation of a family. After all, Bill always wanted to have a daughter and focused on maintaining her usual daily routine, unaware of the deeper currents that threatened her marriage and family. As winter approached, the atmosphere in the Dixons' home became increasingly tense, the once open warmth replaced by an unspoken tension. Julia did not understand Bill's attitude towards Sarah, because his eldest son Robert was deeply in love with her. The start of the affair, Bill's dual role as husband and father, pushed him in two directions, as he tried his best to maintain the appearance of an ideal family life while hiding his forbidden affection. It was the weekdays of May 2021. Julia loved to take care of the yard and the flowers that she planted in honor of her wedding anniversary with Bill. She loved the comfort of home and always kept the house tidy and clean. Every Sunday, she spent hours tending plants, weeding and pruning flowers, enjoying the fact that it allowed her to manage her household in peace. The interior felt the same careful preparation. The walls were hung with family photos, Robert's sports trophies and diplomas decorated the hallway, and Bill's carefully arranged bookshelf took pride of place in the living room, and her houses reflected his serious, diligent character. One time, Bill often began to disappear at work. Frequent calls, emergency night calls have become the order of things over time in this house. Julia lacked his attention and decided to get a job at a local hospital as a nurse. He sent his youngest son to a friend, and Robert often began to stay alone at home. This emotional emptiness led Sarah and Bill into a complicated and unspoken relationship. Their relationship, based on the innocent bond of a father and a son's girlfriend, grew deeper with every shared look, every long conversation. At the age of 17, Sarah was no longer a child, but stood on the threshold of adulthood, overcoming the insecurities and ambitions of youth. He became attached to Sarah, appreciating her warmth and willingness to listen, which his wife rarely allowed. Svra, in turn, felt a strange excitement that they were together. Her affection began to go beyond friendly care, turning into something that she knew was inappropriate, but which she could not resist. After Julia got a job, he was rarely at home and then came in the morning to sleep and left for the night shift. Autumn came and Robert and Sarah's studies began. He often began to call Sarah home, and Robert's father began to stay at home more often, as he began to feel jealous of his son. As summer turned to autumn, the two of them grew closer. Their innocent conversations about school and family life took on an intimate tone when they shared personal thoughts and dreams. Small moments that once went unnoticed, for example, touching hands while setting the table or taking a long look, began to fill with tension. Sarah knew she was entering dangerous territory, but the attraction was intoxicating. Due to Julia's frequent absences, they became a support for each other, filling a void that they never talked about out loud. The turning point came at the end of December, and that day changed the course of their lives forever. On December 27th, 2021, Christmas weekend, they were called to another city. Initially, it was assumed that Julia took her sons to her mother to celebrate the new year there. Robert wanted to stay with Sarah, but she said she would go to her mother in another city. With the departure of Julie and his son, the boundaries that had previously separated them became blurred. The thin veil of opportunity and temptation dissipated. Apparently, they got together and ended up staying at home to spend Christmas together. They spent time eating together, having long conversations by the fireplace and watching movies late into the night. The house itself seemed to hold its breath, the cozy, familiar atmosphere transformed into a space filled with unspoken power. Sarah's feelings, which were once deeply buried, began to surface, and her connection with Billy gained independence. The quiet intimacy between them reached its climax that weekend, and the line between affection and desire was finally blurred. On that fateful Christmas evening, a door opened that neither Sarah nor Bill would ever be able to close again, and the seemingly perfect relationship as a daughter to her father embarked on the path of irreversible change. After those Christmas outings, the atmosphere between Sarah and Bill thickened with a new and dangerous tension. The intimacy they shared created a bond much deeper than they both expected, changing the dynamics of their relationship in unexpected ways. For 17-year-old Sarah, this experience was unforgettable. Having crossed the threshold of communication with a person whom he considered wise and attractive, he felt charmed and craved more attention and intimacy. But for Julia, the realization of what they had done was like a lightning bolt of horror. After his wife Julia and sons returned home, he realized what he had done, and his realization led him to coldly treat Sarah as a real daughter. He understood that his feelings could ruin his son and his entire family, so he decided to bury them forever and never think again. And what happened to Sarah? She did not want to accept his refusal and increasingly craved his attention. As they say, from love to hate is one step. But in Sarah's case, this hatred turned into anger and began to be jealous of his wife. She began to come to Robert's house more often, ostensibly, to be at least as close to Bill as possible. The cold month of February, on the 10th of 2022, when Robert went to the countryside to pick up his brother, and Bill's wife was at work, they stayed together again to set the table before the arrival of all family members. Sarah decided to experience these feelings again, which happened over the Christmas weekend, and stuck to him when he was preparing the table for the feast. But Bill didn't give her a reason, and calmly explained to her all the reasons that this shouldn't happen. But Sarah began to threaten him, saying that she would tell the whole truth to his wife and son, thereby leaving him without love and family at the same time. Bill felt the fear of losing his family and trust. After all, she understood how much Julia and her sons loved him. Shame covered his entire face, and it was as if Sarah wasn't holding threatening words, but a weapon. Bill is consumed by a wave of anxiety and dread following Sarah's threat about the story of betrayal. A mixture of anger and vulnerability wells up within him, each emotion battling for dominance. He feels cornered, acutely aware of the potential devastation Sarah's words could bring if she follows through. Every day was a psychological battle, a push and pull between maintaining the facade of their family life and keeping Liam appeased enough to prevent him from exposing the truth. At night, she would lie awake, torn between guilt and desperation, her mind racing with the potential consequences of her actions. She began to feel the weight of her decisions pressing down on her, suffocating her under the knowledge that one misstep could lead to ruin. After arriving, Julia began to feel that Bill's attitude towards him had changed, and this calmed her down. She didn't even know what kind of game her husband and her son's girlfriend were playing. That one shot would determine. It was the end of winter, and the game was taking new turns. Sarah had an ace in her hands, which she had to show. Sarah began to change noticeably, both physically and mentally. Bill was starting to feel more tense around her at home. Sarah's condition began to deteriorate sharply, frequent vomiting and nervous breakdowns. Bill decided that the rational solution would be to agree to all her conditions in order to at least protect his family from the terrible truth. Realizing that the power was in Sarah's hands, she began to behave as she wanted. She could at any moment call him to her and ask him to bring her what she wanted to eat. But deep down, Bill knew that this path was fraught with danger. He was afraid that every moment of intimacy was bringing them closer to the abyss from which there would be no return. The more he indulged her, the more she expected. It was a vicious circle that tightened its grip every day. Every interaction with them became a test of his resolve, a struggle between the desire to maintain the appearance of an ideal family and the need to protect himself from the consequences of their actions. Bill was thinking of transferring her to another college in a big city, which is very far from their small town, promising her free accommodation and a luxurious life there. Thus, get rid of her and save the family. Meanwhile, Sarah was hiding under a relationship with Robert and making love to him so that he could go to bed, and she could go to Bill's bedroom and continue with him. However, Julia often saw her leaving Robert's room only in the morning and understood why she began to get fat. Julia began to suspect about her pregnancy and considered it from her son and was glad about it. But she didn't tell her son that. She wanted to wait for her to tell him herself. It was the May weekend for Julia, and after that she ran home to tell her husband. By that time it was May 2nd, Bill's birthday. She decided to buy a big cake for the holiday and called her son for food packages for the feast. It was already 2 p.m. after the purchase when they returned home. While he was taking all the groceries home, Mom went into the bedroom and screamed at what she saw and ran away from home hysterically. When Bill saw his mother running hysterically to her son at the door, he immediately got up and ran to his wife without even putting on his underpants. And Sarah was lying naked in the bedroom with a discontented face. Robert was shocked to see his mother in hysterics, and his father naked running after his mother all in tears and apologizing. The personalized cake was smashed on the floor, and the products were all on the ground, which was impossible to do anything with them. Robert couldn't figure out if it was a prank for his mother or a gift from his father. After all, he did not know what was waiting for him inside the house. Bill knew that breaking up with Sarah would not be easy at all. The emotional burden of a double life weighed heavily on him, turning every day into a grueling exercise in deception. At first, he believed that giving in to her demands would allow him to handle the situation until she left for college in another city. But as their relationship deepened, they became increasingly entangled in emotional manipulation and unspoken threats. As they say, everything will come to an end, and Bill's patience has come to an end. Still, considering his wife's feelings, he was sure that she would forgive her if she found out from him. Sarah had already begun to understand this, and of course she was planning the next plan to manipulate Bill. One day before this incident, Bill had the opportunity to tell the whole truth to Julia, but there was not enough time, as Sarah herself suddenly appeared. Fear seized Bill. He could not even speak. He stopped breathing. Blushing all over with fear, he almost fainted. Sarah understood that it was time to act and decided to take revenge on him. The next day, she did so, namely on May 2nd, 2022, on his birthday. She framed him in front of the whole family as a traitor to his family and love. What did Robert do when he entered the room and saw his girlfriend naked and bellies in her stomach, realizing that this child was not from him at all, but from his beloved father, who eventually betrayed his mother and himself? And what did you do when you saw your beloved girl pregnant with you, who was not yours at all, in fact, like a child with your beloved and dear man father? Can this be called moral damage and reported to the police? Do you think this situation is excusable if death? Robert was in a stupor and couldn't even move his fingers. Then he abruptly realized reality. His anger clouded his mind. His screams of horror were replaced by crazy laughter, which led him to a monstrous act. He took a hunting rifle, which he evicted in the Great Hall, and ran after his father. The first shot was at the legs. Bill couldn't run away and crawled to get out of this place faster, but all the results were in vain. Robert caught up and shot at him with the words, "How could you?" "For what?" "What did I do?" Her mother realized that he was not himself and ran after her younger son to call the police. But when she was running away, she stumbled abruptly. Robert heard it and started running after her. Fortunately, she was at the doorstep of the house, quickly went inside, locked the door, and first called 911. Meanwhile, his son climbed through the window shooting at him with a gun. She ran to her youngest son and hid in the attic while 911 was arriving. After successful shots, he went home through the window and went to Sarah. But his mind was so confused that he decided not to shoot her, because he considered it a quick death and decided to torture her and the child and find out the whole truth from her. He tied her to a chair and asked a question, and after each answer, he cut her off, leaving a plus-shaped mark. And for each incorrect or incorrect answer, and asked until she told the truth. Her skin was already streaked with plus. She screamed in pain, but Robert's mother covered her youngest son's ears and hugged him tightly. After the interrogation, he cut open her stomach and she lay bleeding and slowly losing consciousness. Then he took a gun and shot her. From the sound of the gun, his younger brother shouted, and he realized that his mother and brother were witnesses to his murders, decided to kill them all. Going up to the attic, he notices that she is locked inside and decides to just burn them alive. He shoots a gun, making a hole in the door, and fills it with gasoline and throws a match. Meanwhile, he packs his suitcase himself to go to another city to forget about his family as if he had never had one. Then he dragged his father and threw him into the flames while he sat at the exit and waited for 911. And his mother and brother were burning alive, screaming for help. After all, if they had opened up, they would have died at the hands of their son, painfully and slowly. Therefore, until the end, she sat hugging her youngest son, asking him for forgiveness. When 911 arrived, everyone was already dead, and Robert was sitting in the role of the victim and crying for his family, playing the role of the victim. Bill, who was once a loving husband and father, lost everything in a matter of moments: his wife, son, and the life they built together. The tragedy left a void that could not be filled, an obsessive reminder of a choice made in the shadows. In his last moments, as flames engulfed their home, he was deprived of the opportunity to understand the depth of Bill's struggle and the betrayal that took place in the walls they shared. Bill, driven by loneliness and unfulfilled desire, paid a high price for his choice. The search for solace in the arms of Sarah's son's girlfriend led him on a path of destruction, where desire turned into despair. The fleeting moments of passion were overshadowed by the irreversible consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, Robert has risen from the ashes, a figure dressed in the guise of a victim. In the eyes of society, he was an innocent man who was the victim of a tragic accident, a boy who lost his mother and father during a terrible fire. However, he knew what role he had played in this tragedy, in the web of manipulation and deception that had entangled them all. Sarah's plans took on other turns, which she couldn't even imagine. The desire to frame Bill led her to her own trap, where she eventually suffered herself, but also the child who was never born. The thirst for revenge and keeping everything under their own hands cost the lives of all family members. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this gripping tale, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel for more thrilling crime stories. Your support helps us bring you the narratives that keep you on the edge of your seat. Stay tuned for more.